there are some basic settings that you need to set up in your EAS 2020 tables inside the master control. So we're going to walk through the first portion of this in this demonstration. So first thing you want to do is go to your shortcuts folder or wherever you have your MC configurator, which is the editing software, and double click on either the shortcut or the executable, depending on where you have yours, and you'll see this particular box open up. Now I'm going to, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to stretch this out. I believe it'll let me do this. Yep, and I'm going to stretch this out so that we can see it on my whole screen. And first thing you're going to do is go up to Communication, select the target to configure, and you're going to be choosing the Master Control 2020 that you find inside your screens here. Now the 400's done exactly the same, but there are a couple of other differences that will take place. So there'll be a whole other demonstration on the 400, how to do that. So for this purpose, this is for the 2020 only. So click on the channel that you have for your 2020, either your SD or your HD, and you'll see the chassis, IP address, and information show up on the window here. Then click the OK button, go up to File, and click on the Retrieve Configuration from Target. Okay, now, after you've done that, there'll be certain things such as the names that'll show up down here in the source windows and so forth. You want to go up here to where it says EAS. Click on that, and there'll be a drop down. For now, there's only one called EAS. Now, the EAS configuration table will appear here, and we're going to talk in this demonstration on how to set up each one of these little sections that you're going to be using. So the first thing you're going to do is select the mode that your EAS system will be operating in. Now there's only two choices here, other than off, of course, but you have an auto and a manual mode. And what this means is, and generally you're going to leave this in the auto mode, but the difference between the two is that, and what this means is that you're either using a TFT, a Sage, or a DASDEC EAS unit system. And those can be set up in either, inside of their system configurations, they can be set up as either auto or manual modes also. And generally, if you, and I believe this is pretty global, your system may or may not be this way, but generally, when an EAS alert comes down, that's something that just needs to be played out. You want to play it out, so we just set all this up in auto mode. So if the TFT or the Sage or whatever is running in auto mode, then, well, actually it doesn't matter over here in this case, because what this means is that whenever whenever the master control gets the command to play the EAS, this mode here will then take over and do its thing. Now, if it's in auto mode, that means it will automatically play out the EAS crawl and the audio if it's in this mode. If it's in the manual mode, then what ends up happening is you've got a section down here called Notify. And what will then happen is on the master control preset monitor, it will start blinking or show up with a notify that it's ready that the EAS is ready to play out. And it'll be waiting for the operator to actually press a button that's been configured on the master control panel to then then manually at that point, but then automatically just play out as soon as they press that button. Okay, that would be if that was set up in manual mode, but generally it's just in auto mode, and then the notify wouldn't matter. Okay, so now the audio macro number, there is a macro that will need to be set up regardless of the type of EAS system that you have, that this macro will point to. And generally we send this out as macro number 1 as a default, and I'll show you in another demonstration how to build the macro. But we usually send that out already pre-configured. But if not, you need to change it, or you want to change what macro number it is, because maybe you're setting your EAS up a long time after you've already got your system running. You might already have 1 or 2 macros in there. You'll just use the next macro number. So you just drop down the arrow and choose whatever macro has been created. Now these macros are only going to show up if they've been pre-created. So I will show you how to create those, and then you can come back in here and change it if you need to. The live audio macro number only refers to a macro that's performed with the Sage, which is a setting that has to be set up in the Sage, of which I'm not familiar, but this is generally not even used. So that can be left blank in 99.99% of every case. I don't know of anybody that's ever used this. Okay, in the timer section, the display minimum needs to actually be set to the lowest possible number that it can be set to, which happens to be 10, and this is in seconds. And what this means is that 10 seconds maybe a quick explanation of this is that the way that the macro plays out is the serial command will come down regardless, but when the audio header comes into the master control system, and the master control is notified about that header. When it hears that or sees that header, it will then play the audio, and when the audio completes, then the EAS crawl will run its final iteration or the final crawl and go off the screen and be done, and then everything will go back to normal. So what this display minimum is if you put a number such as 10 in here, what this says is that as soon as the audio finishes, if the audio happens to be less than 10 seconds, then this will keep the crawl playing for as long as this display minimum shows up in here. So if this were a large number, like 100 seconds, and let's say your audio only played out for 10 seconds, then this minimum means that the crawl will continue to play out for another 90 seconds. So your audio was 10 seconds, another 90 seconds. So that means if you have a very short crawl even, then that crawl will keep on playing. Every single time, it'll just keep coming back on the screen until it finishes playing out the rest of that 100 seconds. So if you make this a 10-second rule, most audio is going to be at least 10 seconds. And if it's not, the crawl will probably be a little bit longer anyway. So then after 10 seconds, the crawl will then finish out and be done, and it will then go back to normal operation on your system. So we like to keep that at a minimum. The auto forward we like to set that at a maximum, which is 600 or 5 minutes. And is that right? 600 seconds is, times 60 seconds in a minute. Or, no, actually 600 seconds divided by 60 seconds in a minute. That's actually 10 minutes, I believe. Anyway, that's the maximum amount of time that this auto forward is. So what this means is that if you put your system in manual mode up here, and this starts blinking as soon as the EAS comes down, then what happens is it sits there in that blinking mode for 600 seconds, meaning that if that it won't play out for up to 600 seconds, but after 600 seconds, 601 seconds later, it's going to automatically forward the EAS and play it out anyway. So if your operator happens to be away from the manual press of the button, or for whatever reason it doesn't happen, this will force it to play out anyway. Okay, the Sage audio wait, again, this is part of the live audio macro, and it is not generally used. So there's really not this is if you didn't want to play it out, and you wanted the audio to just not play at all, and that's generally not the case. Means that it's an FCC regulation, then that's generally or a rule. Generally, you want the audio to play out anyway. So for whatever reason that is, I'm not sure what that's in there for other than that, but in most cases that will be used. Okay, the hold off GPIs, these are also part of that same Sage audio wait and the live audio macro. The GPI numbers would, when you drop this down, show you the 8 GPIs. These are input relays. And that would be a trigger. In order for this audio wait to function properly, you have to create a GPI, which would be triggered by a setting inside the Sage for this particular mode. And again, 99% of any application, this will never be used. And the mode goes along with it. You can either have that an active open or closed, relay contact, and that's how you would set those up. But I don't think you would be needing this. The other section up here is the actual crawl section. So you can actually place the crawl in two locations, either on the top of the monitor where it plays out, or on the bottom of the program bus. So on the air, it'll either play out on the top or the bottom location of the on-air screen. And how fast you want that to play out, there are only 3 speeds. You'll have to test these and see what you think of how long they are. You cannot change the actual font. It is what it is. However, you can change the color of the font, the foreground, to whatever you want, and you can change the background. So if you don't want anything, or if you'd like a color, maybe yellow on top of blue, and that's what that's used for. So you'll have to make settings here, change them, run your test, see what that looks like. Now the notify, if you're in manual mode, the notify, you can have this, the notify be active or not, meaning that you want this to really show up on the preset monitor. There's a button that you'll program into your master control panel that will blink anyway. So it'll sit there flashing, waiting for the operator to press it. But this is for the monitor. So if you'd like that to show up on the monitor and also blink, it'll say EAS ready or something like that. Then you can also change the color of that text to whatever you want, the background that it shows up on, and you can have it blink or not blink. So if you want it to actually flash on the monitor, the preset monitor, it'll sit there and blink, EAS ready. And if you don't press it, remember the auto forward, it'll play out automatically after whatever seconds you have in there. Otherwise, there'll be another button on the panel that you would then press. And those are the basic settings for the EAS. Now, there's a couple other things that you're going to have to do, and I'm going to talk about those in upcoming demonstrations. There is one more setting in here we might as well discuss, which is the serial port. Serial port is also 99% of every system that ever runs EAS runs on the serial port. You'll basically choose the port that you want this to play on the master control. There's 4 ports. You'll then, you want to look this up in the manual, but you'll have to set the port to RS-232 or 422 with a jumper. And then you can select the baud rate that you'd like that to play out on. And once you've set that, and you click OK here, generally too, you can put this on one of 4 ports, but we usually reserve port number 1 for automation. But if you don't use automation, you can use port 1, or you can use any port you'd like anyway. But the baud rate, by the way, you'll need to look these up in your manuals, but I believe the TFT must run at 9600, 8, none, and 1. The Sage can run at different baud rates, but there are a couple of fixed ones that are 9600. But again, refer to your Sage and your TFT manuals, or even there's some instructions on how to set this up in our system. When you click OK, you can actually see that serial port setup. When you go here, you'll see that it used port 1. This, you can't change this from here. This is only a view, but you can change the baud rate and parity settings once you've enabled that port. Okay, so that's how you set up the basic EAS operations. There are other demonstrations on the macros and the GPIs and such. So we'll end this one for now.